Good day, everyone. This is David Cooper from the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity. I'm very pleased to welcome you all to this webinar organized by our colleagues in the Global Environmental Facility about the Global Biodiversity Framework Fund. As you know, this fund was established following a request from the CBD Conference of the Parties, COP15, as part of that package with the Global Biodiversity Framework itself, the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. The fund was established quickly. We've had some funding rounds already and some projects awarded and in progress already. Now, the third selection round for the first tranche of this fund is open. It's open until the end of this month, to the 30th of September. That round has been extended following requests from parties to do so. And this briefing today is really just another opportunity for the GEF Secretariat to explain the process very carefully so that all countries are in a position to submit their proposals for this fund. So I would simply just like to thank our colleagues, Chiz and Jurgis in the Secretariat and their colleagues for preparing this webinar. And I'll hand over to Chiz.
Great. Thank you so much, David, for opening this webinar, and welcome to all colleagues from around the world. My name is Chizuru Aoki, and together with my colleague Jurgis Sapianskas, we have a short presentation to give you a briefing on the GBFF Global Biodiversity Framework Fund. We'll talk about the key characteristics of the fund, what we have done so far for the programming, and how you can access resources in the third selection round that David just talked about. And then we're open for any questions as well as clarifications that you may wish to see. So with that, can we go to the next slide, please? So this slide in a nutshell is showing the timeline as well as the major milestones, if you will, of the establishment as well as operationalizing, and what that means is making the fund work. Since the CBD COP15 decision in December of 2022, which requested the GEF to establish a GBF fund. And as you all know, there was a lot of decision language about complementing existing support and scaling up financing to ensure timely implementation and to really design and implement a simple and effective project cycle so that countries can have easy and efficient access. So based on that, we went to the council 6 months later. The fund was established, as well as what we call the programming directions, which is basically a menu of options for countries to look at and access resources. And then the fund was ratified at the 7th GF Assembly in August 2023. And we had the first GBFF council. The fund has its own council. And the first meeting took place in February of 2024. And operational policies, what that means is how the resources are allocated, what the project cycle, the simplified project cycle would function. Those two key elements were approved in February of 2024, 7 months ago. So right after these building blocks of the fund and how the fund would function got established, the first and second selection rounds for countries to submit and access resources started. And that started right away. The first and second selection rounds took place in March and May 2024. And then for the second council meeting of the GBFF that took place in June, the first work program was approved, as well as the terms of reference for the auxiliary body and subsidiary group. So now we're here in early September, And we're having this webinar not just to give you an update on how things are going, but it's because we do have a third selection round open where the countries can submit their project preparation grant requests. And that particular third selection round is open. It opened August 8th, and it's going to be open until September of 30th. So we wanted to organize this webinar with the CBD colleagues and reach out to a number of country partners so that you're aware that it's open, and also give you some information on how you go about accessing the resources. Next slide, please. So the bulk of this presentation will focus more on how you go about accessing resources, what we have done. This is just one slide that summarizes how the GBFF is different. Then I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Jurgis, to walk you through the access procedure. So as I mentioned already, there are some key differences. The key difference is in the governance and the resources, and how the resource allocation and project cycle are organized. Very briefly, in terms of the governance, as indicated earlier, based on the COP guidance, there is a separate council, the GBFF Council, that's meeting to make decisions on the matters related to this particular fund. We have an expanded list of observers that are unique for the GBFF Council, and they include the IPLCs, youth, women, conservation and philanthropic organization, and private sector. On the first three, IPLCs, youth, and women, the nomination of the observers, and there are two per each class of observer is organized in coordination with the CBD, because for the COP participation and engagement, these three observer groups already have an established mechanism. In June, Council also approved the terms of reference for the auxiliary body, and this is for developing countries with important biodiversity and ecosystems to be able to nominate and to form a group that can provide suggestions and recommendations to the Council, and this is a technical level body. And the Council also approved the establishment of the advisory group of, this is primarily focusing on non-sovereign contributors and non-sovereign participants. And this is in a way to really enable the expansion, if you will, of the resources that could contribute, and to really reflect the views of groups that are non-sovereign, if you will, to provide suggestions as well as recommendations to the Council on key topics. Now, the second element has to do with resources based on the COP guidance. The fund has been established to be financed from all sources, and that includes obviously the sovereign, the countries, private sector, philanthropies, as well as any sources that the fund is now equipped to accept resources. And there is a due diligence procedure with the trustee of the fund that will be put into place for non-sovereign contributions. Contributions are then coming in on a rolling basis. As of now, what we can tell you is about $244 million. And I would like to also mention that we are planning to have a pledging session for the GBFF at the upcoming COP16, because there's a number of interested donors that would like to be at the COP and make announcements, if you will, on contributions, voluntary contributions to the GBFF. So we're very much looking forward to that. And now on the resource allocation and project cycle, co-financing, as you know, is for this particular fund is encouraged. It is not required. And based on specific COP guidance, we have come and developed and introduced a much streamlined and much faster project cycle. And unlike the other GEF access models, GBFF, there is a single project modality. So there is no having to use different templates as well as different requirements, if you will, for different project modalities. It's based on the competitive allocation model. We have multiple selection rounds, and these are based on the calls for proposals, and these are not full-fledged proposals. These are what we call the Project Preparation Grant requests. And there are agreed selection criteria and portfolio level targets that have been agreed upon as part of the GBFF establishment. And we're keeping track of those, and those, Jurgis will walk you through what those might be and how we're doing. We'll discuss a little bit later, and the implications for the third round. Next slide, please. And I think this is where I hand it over to you, Jurgis, right?
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, and good time of the day to all. To continue with the highlighting the main difference in the Global Biodiversity Framework Fund, the GBFF, compared to the GEF Trust Fund, you probably know better. We wanted to highlight that the programming direction, so the list of eligible activities, is different for the GBFF. It's one of the main areas of difference. As instructed by the COP, the programming direction of the GBFF have been designed to complement and scale up the existing resources that are provided by the GEF Trust Fund through the GEF 8 programming directions. So we went on and identified gaps in support to the implementation of the Global Biodiversity Framework in our current GEF Trust Fund, and identified 8 action areas. Those are entry points, the menu of options Chiju mentioned earlier. And those detail the activities that are eligible for funding by the GBFF. One simple example on differentiation, and I will not go in detail here, but one example is on Action Area 7 for invasive alien species. In the GEF Trust Fund, we have traditionally focused the limited resources on comprehensive management frameworks for invasive alien species in island ecosystems only, because we know that this is where invasive alien species have the most impact. And it was decided in the GBFF to expand the scope of support to all countries and all ecosystems where invasive alien species have an impact. So this is just one of many examples to highlight that what is eligible is different. And so we encourage countries to really look at carefully the program direction to craft projects that are fully aligned with the action areas of the Global Biodiversity Framework. Then I will go in more detail on the operational implication of the new allocation policy and project cycle that has been decided for the GBFF. For the overview, let me clarify that there is a single entry point to make a funding request to the GBFF, and it is called the Project Reparation Grant request. So a single template and single document that has been drastically streamlined compared to what we do for the GEF Trust Fund. So a PPG request is a document with 5 pages of text maximum. It is a very streamlined project concept that we reduced to the bare minimum for the Secretariat to be able to assess based on the selection criteria that were agreed upon by the Council. So in concrete terms, what happens is that the GEF Secretariat opens a submission window. As you understood, we are currently in the first selection round, and PPG requests can be submitted up until the end of this month, September 30th. Then within that window, GEF agencies submit on behalf of countries with the endorsement of the GEF operational focal point PPG requests. At the end of the period, submission period, the GEF Secretariat will review all the PPG requests we will have received based on 7 agreed selection criteria. And then once this review has been done for the entire package of PPG requests that were submitted, the CEO will approve all or a subset of the submitted PPG requests, and the selection is based on the review, so the selection criteria, resource availability at that time, and 3 portfolio level targets that were agreed. So on this slide, you have the entirety of the 7 selection criteria and the 3 portfolio level targets that were agreed. The first 6 selection criteria depend entirely on the content of your proposal, of the PPG request, your project concept. So you're invited to pay particular attention to those and craft proposals that are fully aligned or as aligned as possible with those selection criteria. Obviously, no single project can respond fully to each and every selection criteria, but we have to select based on those. So the more you're aligned with them, the more likely you are to be selected. So the 6 criteria that depend on the content of the PPG request are the potential to generate global environmental benefits, the alignment with the programming direction, so the 8 action areas, alignment with your NBSAP and with your biodiversity finance plan if you already have one. Selection criteria also include the level of policy coherence and coordination across multiple ministries and stakeholders of interest. It also includes the potential of the project to mobilize private sectors and philanthropy resources as co-finance, but also beyond the lifetime of the project for a project that would develop financial mechanism for biodiversity, for example. And the last one that really depends on the design of your project is engagement with and support to indigenous peoples and local communities. So those are the 6 that really depend on the content. And then the 7th is balance amongst region, where the CEO has the task to ensure that overall at the portfolio level, there is balance amongst the different region in the selected PPG request. Then at the portfolio level, we have 3 specific quantitative targets that have been set. The first one is that a specific share is to be dedicated to SIDS and LDCs. So 36 plus 3% of the GBFF resources are to be allocated to SIDS and LDCs. The plus 3% is allocated to SIDS and LDCs during the first 3 years of the fund, and then it will be reviewed. And if this plus 3% has not been used after 3 years, then it will be reallocated to other countries. The second portfolio level target is that a full 25% is to be programmed through international financial institutions that are GEF agencies. So again, recognizing that it's the prerogative of countries to choose with which agency they want to work, but we have a target at the portfolio level for the project that are presented through international financial institutions. So for us, it is the World Bank, the regional development banks, and IFAD, the International Fund for Agricultural Development. And finally, the last portfolio level target is that an aspirational share of 20% by 2030 of GBFF resource are to be allocated to support actions by indigenous peoples and local communities for the conservation, restoration, sustainable use, and management of biodiversity. So as you have understood, PPG requests will be reviewed according to the selection criterion, engagement with and support to IPLCs. But in addition, we ask every PPG request to provide the specific dollar amount of financial resource that the project plans to dedicate to support actions by IPLCs to better inform the selection based on this portfolio level target. Let me really insist that the PPG, even though this is a lot of information, many selection criteria, what is requested to submit a funding request is 5 pages of text. So we really reduce to the bare minimum the concepts so that we can assess based on those criteria, but at the same time reduce the burden for countries to access funding. So far in the first 2 rounds, after submission of the projects, we have been able to provide a response on the selection or not within 6 weeks. It's going to be a bit longer for the first selection round because of the COP in the middle, but you will have a response in the course of December. We'll come back to that at the end of the presentation. So what happens once your PPG request is approved? Basically, you receive the Project Reparation Grant money, so the resources to prepare the project, to fully develop the project. And countries and agencies have then 9 months to develop the full project documentation, which is then to be submitted to council approval for projects that are above 5 million of project financing. For projects that are up to 5 million, the council provided delegated authority to the CEO to directly approve projects. This means that overall, with this 9 months deadline and the delegated approval, the timeline is much faster than the current GEF Trust Fund cycle. And let me highlight that here, for this fund, council approval means green light for implementation, whereas in the GEF Trust Fund, the council approves project information documents that are concept stage, not the fully developed project. So once this approval endorsement has been provided, we introduce a new cancellation rule to speed up the start of implementation. It means that agencies, once the GEF has given green light for implementation, the GEF Council or the CEO by delegation of authority, once this has been provided, agencies and countries have 12 months to get the first disbursement and the implementation to start. So this is, again, to respond to the COP guidance to have a faster project cycle. Now, finally, let's look at how much resources you can request and what is the size of projects you can submit. The council decided to introduce country-specific ceilings to reflect the fact that biodiversity is not evenly distributed across the globe. Those ceilings are here to ensure that through the competitive allocation model, no country would overly concentrate financial resources compared to its potential to generate global biodiversity benefits. These country-specific ceilings have been defined as the maximum share, the maximum percentage of GBFF resources a country may receive. So those are percentage. And the council decided to use the shares of the GEF 8 biodiversity star allocation as the best available measure of countries' respective potential to generate global biodiversity benefits. In practice, the Secretariat has published in February a table presenting for each country its ceiling, so the percentage, and also what it meant for the current first programming tranche. We recently republished this table to also show for each country the maximum dollar value of funding requests that countries can make for the current third selection round, given the respective country ceilings and the amount already used by projects with approved PPG requests in the first 2 selection rounds. We'll put a link to the document in the chat. And I've also here extracted the first page of that document that is posted on the GEF website. And I will walk you through this table with the example of Angola, for example. What you have in this table in the first column or second column are the country-specific ceilings, so the percentages. So for Angola, for example, it means that they can receive at any moment up to 1.55% of the total GBFF resources that have been open for programming since the establishment of the fund. The next column, the third column, translates that percentage into a dollar value, given we have open 211 million for programming at this stage. The council indeed decided that to allocate resources through discrete programming tranches. This is to improve predictability for recipient countries because we can then provide a table with a specific number per country, while accommodating the fact that financial contributions are on a rolling basis. It's not a replenishment model. So the approval of the resource allocation policy back in February triggered the opening of the first programming tranche, which has been making $211 million US dollars available for programming, and those 211 million corresponded to all pledges that were confirmed by the trustee in February at the time we opened the programming tranche. So Angola in the first tranche can access up to 3.26 million of GBFF resources. In the fourth column, there is the amount that is used by projects with approved PPG requests. In the case of Angola, it submitted successfully a PPG request in the second selection round for a total project cost of 3.26 million, which means that what you have in the last column, which is the amount, the maximum dollar value of funding requests that countries can make in this current third round, Angola is no longer in a position to submit a project because it doesn't have enough resource available. It already reached its ceiling. So in the case of Angola and all the other countries that already are at their ceiling or close to their ceiling, they cannot submit now in the current programming tranche, but they will be able to submit again funding request once we open a new programming tranche, which will happen when the GBFF receives an additional 250 million in confirmed pledges. Let me highlight that those numbers are not country allocations. It's not like the GEF Trust Fund where the star is ring-fenced for a specific country. In the GBFF, as you have understood, it's a competitive model, and those are ceilings, caps for each country. Let me finally highlight that the amount you have in the final column are to cover the full project costs. This means that the project preparation grant, the project financing, and the corresponding agency fees have to be under the amount that is shown in the last column. And with that, let me pass it back to Chizuru to give you an overview, an update on the programming to date under the GBFF.
All right, thank you so much, Jurgis. So now I'm going to walk you through quickly on how much of the GBF resources have been programmed so far and which countries have accessed the resources. So I hope you can see the map that has been put on the screen right now. So far, we've actually received 70 PPG requests submitted, and we're also keeping track, if you will, of submissions from LDCs and CIS because of the portfolio level targets that you have seen earlier that Jurgis talked about. Of those, as Jurgis mentioned, this is a competitive process. So far, 22 PPG requests have been approved. Of those, it's 11 coming from the LDCs and CIS. And they're covering 24 countries. And part of the reason is that a couple of the proposals submitted to us had multi-country. So countries came together and had a common theme that they wanted to submit the PPG request for. So you have a larger number of countries and the PPG request is approved. So after the 2 selection rounds we ran earlier this year, we have allocated or set aside, pending the CEO Council approval, $110 million of GBFF financing. Next slide, please. So Jurgis talked a little bit earlier about the portfolio level targets. So this slide summarizes how we're doing after the two selection rounds. The portfolio level targets in terms of the resource provision from the first 2 selection rounds, it's about 26% resources going to or being set aside for programming and CIS and LDCs. 6% through the international financing institutions. These are IFAD, the World Bank, regional development banks of the GEF agencies. And 35% of the resources have been allocated to support actions by IPLCs. And now, just to remind, the portfolio level targets are 36% plus 3% for the CIS and LDCs, and you can see that we need to do more programming to catch up for the CIS and LDCs. And the target for the international financing institutions is at 25%. So we need to do a lot more to catch up to that target. And the aspirational share of 20% to support actions by IPLCs was part of the portfolio level target. So in terms of the IPLC engagement, I think we're doing very well. And of course, we can continue to highlight and support the IPLC actions because there's nothing that would stop us in the countries from submitting initiatives that would address the needs and priorities of the IPLCs. So the charts below are showing how we have done in terms of the first selection round. We have 4 proposals from 3 countries come in, and for the first round, 4 submissions were actually approved already, and none of those actually came from the LDCs and the CIDs. And I should also mention all of them the 4 proposals that were selected for the first selection round, have either gone through the approval by the council in June and subsequent steps, or under the delegated authority by the CEO to approve, because one project was under $5 million. So the first selection round projects are off, I would say, to a very expeditious start to access resources, but also to move towards the implementation. Second selection round, we received 66 proposals. 18 were selected from 21 countries for a total of $70.7 million. And you can see the breakdown for the LDCs and CIS on the right-hand side. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide shows a portfolio that is shown by the different regions and regional distributions. And as you might recall, having a regional distribution was part of the criteria that have been agreed upon. And after 2 selection rounds, it's too early to have a statistically significant discussion, but you can see that all regions so far, the Latin American, Caribbean, Africa, Asia, and ECA region, have submitted proposals, and all regions have had at least one project selected at the PPG stage. And you can also see the funding amounts dedicated so far, allocated so far to the projects and from the different regions. And we already showed you a map, but here is a list of countries that have come in and submitted proposals, and the countries that have successfully accessed resources or have the resources set aside at the PPG request level. Next slide, please. So this slide gives you an understanding of the agency distribution so far. And as you can see, there is a wide number of agencies and countries are reaching out to submit their concepts, PPGs, as well as programming. And we have highlighted in green the agencies that are classified, categorized as international finance institutions, the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, Inter-American Development Bank, as well as WOAD, West African Development Bank. And because we need to be keeping track of programming through the IFIs, and there is a target of 25% to be programmed through the IFIs. And as you can see, for the first 2 submissions, we actually did not get too many submissions coming in from these institutions. And so that also resulted in a fairly low level, as of now, after the 2 selection rounds, of programming as well as support coming through the IFIs. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide, just to summarize the 3rd selection round that's open right now. It opened on August 8th, and it will close on September 30th, 2024. And the open period is longer in response to requests from many of you to have the selection rounds open longer. And the decisions are to be notified to the countries by December 8th, 2024. So that means October, November, 2 months and a bit. And this is actually in account of the SPs as well as COPs that will take place in Colombia in October. So 3 weeks of that period will be taken up by a COP. So that's actually having some impact on our commitment to notify the countries, and that's going to be by December 8th. And you guys already talked about this. There is a maximum dollar value of funding requests that countries can submit for the 3rd selection round. And I put in here the link to the access this information. So it'll tell you what has been the percentage, maximum amount you can go for, what has been programmed so far from the 1st and 2nd selection rounds, and how much you can submit for the 3rd selection round. So click on this link, and it'll take you to this table and the document, and you can look up your country to see how much resources that you can actually compete for. And last but not least, As I showed you in the portfolio analysis, we are lagging behind after the first and second selection rounds for support for the LDCs and SIDs. So we will prioritize the LDCs and SID submissions for the third selection round, and also for programming proposals that are coming from countries that choose to utilize international finance institutions. And this is in line with the portfolio level progress and the portfolio level target that we presented in this presentation. So with that, thank you so much. I didn't realize the presentation ended up taking 30 minutes, but we'd be happy to answer any questions and clarify as participants might wish to pose questions to us. Thank you so much.
Geez, there's a lot of questions in the chat.
Thank you so much, Eben. Yeah, I see there are, let's see, 16 questions already in the chat. Do you want to go through them, or do you first want to go through the those who have raised their hands? Now it's 17.
Yeah, maybe we go over a question first, and then to raise their hand. So maybe we'll have less questions.
Okay, fine. So we will do that very quickly. So Yorgis, there's a question on co-financing from Juan Nogues. Would you like to cover that one?
Sure. So let me read the question so that everybody knows which question we're answering.
The first
we have
one.
a question. We have question if co-financing can come from other GEF Trust Fund projects, either GEF 7 or GEF 8. So again, let's reemphasize that in the GBFF co-financing is encouraged but not required. At the moment, what you would mention as co-financing would maybe mean multi-trust fund project that is blending resources access from the GEF Trust Fund and the GBFF. At the moment, given the incompatibility in the project cycles, because we develop a very different project cycle for the GBFF to experiment with something that would be significantly faster, those two cycles are not compatible, so there is no way to, at the moment, do multi-trust fund project that would use GEF resources and GBFF resources in the same project directly. So at the moment, we are requesting countries to focus on pure GBFF projects in their submissions, simply because the point of approval at the Council, in the GEF Council and GBFF Council, are not the same. One is on the concept, when the other is at the fully developed project stage. And so there will have to be adjustment. We'll be working on making this possible in the future, but at the moment, it's not possible. Now, if you create a new GBFF project that is there and works in an area where you have already a GEF Trust Fund project ongoing, please do reference that and make clear in your proposal what is the added value of the GBFF proposal, what is the increment in the GEF language of the new proposal. But it would not be considered as co-financing per se, the GEF funding on top of the GBFF funding. On the other questions, of course, co-financing can be in kind. The same co-financing policies and rules, except that it's not required, apply. So in terms of reporting, in kind co-financing is obviously possible for GBFF projects. The first question is there a minimum action area or core indicators that have to be included in the PPG request? So there are 8 action areas that are defined. A project can decide to focus on only one action area, and that is totally fine, or could use multiple entry points at the same time. That is really up to the country to decide what priorities it want to pursue into a tangible project. So only one is feasible, multiple entry points possible as well. In terms of core indicators in the template, and I know there are questions on the template, so we have on the website, and I will add the link in the chat, the template for the PPG request. It's available on the public website, of course, and the GEF agencies are here to help you craft the proposal following the template as well. That's their role. The agency you will decide to work with. So in that template, there is the list of the core indicators that are to be used with explicit links to ones that are closely related to biodiversity, and one of those that are closely related to impact on biodiversity have to be indeed used for a GBFF project to quantify the impact on biodiversity that is expected from the project. I think I've answered this one. Do you want to take another one?
Yeah, so, while you're explaining, I've tried to answer some of the questions on the template as well as access to the information online, and those are now showing as answered, but the number of questions keep increasing, so let's just go through them. So there's a question on okay, so not in any order. Are there proposed dates for subsequent submissions? Question from Kim Friedman. No, we have this one set, and depending on the resource contributions, as well as how much of the pledging session would yield, and when they're coming into the trust fund, we will organize either the subsequent selection rounds, or we might be looking into opening the next tranche. So I hope that answers the question. So questions, there's a number of questions from FAO. Link to the February report as mentioned. We can provide that information. I'm just gonna type it in the council document link, which should be available to everybody. And if you look at the work program cover note, that should be able that should tell you the information that you're looking for. Successful project proposals published. Anything that has been approved that goes onto the our public website, so you should be able to look at those. Coming down. When was the last round for submissions? So we had the first two submission rounds, selection rounds open. The very first one was open very briefly because it was a specific one for proposals that were ready to be submitted for the work program constitution and approved by June. So that was open, I think, for several days in February. And the next one was open immediately after that and close in March. So now we have a new one opening in August, as indicated earlier, and it's going to close on September 30th, and results to be conveyed back to the countries by December, middle of December. So I think there was a question for you from Rita Benhima Jurgis about the guide or manual available to simplify the preparation.
Thank you very much for the question. There is no guide per se, like practical guide. That is the task of the GEF agencies. What we provide is the programming directions and the template, and those are what is required in the PPG request is the very basic elements of project design that GEF agencies should be equipped with to support countries to do. A theory of change, the baseline of the project, basically describing what the country wants to do and why it is expected to have the anticipated impact that are sought. And then specific question for the selection criteria we have discussed. So there is no specific guidance because we want to leave flexibility to proponents to design a project that best responds to their priorities. What we provide in the programming direction are precise list of elements that are that can be supported by this fund. And of course, if there are specific questions, we can discuss bilaterally if there is a need. But that is the role of the GEF agency and in our GEF partnership system to really help countries to develop sound project designs that are that meet the selection criteria we have presented. I think the next question was on the multi-trust fund. I think we covered that at the moment it will be possible in the future. We will work to make that possible in the future. But right now, given the ongoing work in the GEF Council to streamline the GEF Trust Fund project cycle, we are not making those changes at the same time. So it's something we will be working on in the future. So for now, focus on pure GBFF projects.
All right, thanks, Lucas.
I can take the next one if you want. There's a question if CSOs can directly submit proposals. So it was decided that resources, all the GBFF resources would be allocated in a country-driven manner. That's in the resource allocation policy. It means that it's really up to the country to decide what to do with its resources, and so to decide which will be the executing agencies, and finally where the money will go at the country level. So it's the GEF focal points in practice that decides on that. So a civil society organization cannot submit directly a project. It is a GEF agency on behalf of the country that submits the project, but the project could be executed entirely by a civil society organization if that's the decision of the country as manifested by the decision of the GEF focal point. Then maybe I can take the other one on NBSAPs. We are a question from Nepal that is currently preparing its NBSAP, like most countries that are currently updating and reviewing their NBSAPs. Obviously, as you have seen, there is a selection criterion based on alignment with the NBSAPs or other documents to identify country priorities. At this stage, for countries that do not have a recent NBSAP, we do still look at the former one to see if the project responds to one of the priorities that were identified in the past. But we're obviously more flexible at this stage where most countries are still revising their NBSAPs. Many countries have already submitted their new national targets, so it will be an element for the first selection round for those countries that have already set their national targets to explain how the project they're sending respond to those national targets they have set for themselves to implement the global biodiversity framework. But on the NBSAP itself, of course, we are more flexible. But that is notwithstanding that for countries that have already updated their NBSAP, there is obviously, given the selection criterion, a bonus point if you want, if the project that is submitted clearly respond to a priority that is identified in the new NBSAP, because it's the selection criterion that was set for the GBFF.
Okay, thanks, Jurgis. So I think I missed the first question from Jane about the regional balance. So that's part of the agreed upon criteria. And what this means is we're actually keeping track of how much proposals have come from different regions and how much of the proposal PPG approvals have been given to countries and submissions from different regions. And I think I presented a couple of charts that shows you how we're doing. So we need to actually make sure that there is a balanced approach, that no one region is getting a majority of resources, and some regions might not be served at all. So we're keeping track of this on the cumulative sense, but also on the by the selection round by selection round. And this is to make sure that there is opportunities, if you will, for all countries and all regions to be able to access the GBFF resources. So I hope that's clear, and that's actually codified in the selection criteria. So this is something that is going to carry through for the duration of the GBFF operations. Okay, so let me also go through. There's a question from Eswatini. For countries that have the minimum country ceilings and non-LDCs, challenges getting the interest of an agency to work with limited. Is it worth it to wait for the next tranche? For the country ceiling will increase. So to answer that question, when the next tranche opens, we will be obviously keeping track of the resources, the maximum value that has been set for the first tranche. And then we will, countries that did not access any resources during the first tranche and the multiple selection rounds, you will see that those will be carried over and then added to the maximum ceiling that you would have for the second tranche and so on and so forth. So it's in a way up to the countries to decide if you want to wait or if you want to go ahead and address your priorities at the under the ceiling, that maximum amounts that have been notified to you for the first tranche or not. I mean, the choice is up to you, but just to know that for the second and subsequent tranches, the resource allocated per country will go up minus whatever that has been already programmed. So I hope that's clear from Esatini. So there's a question, can you walk us through the process when a country submits a proposal, endorsement letter, and what stages will it go through until it becomes accepted? Also, is there information about the funds available or allocated? So on your last question, there was a slide that shows you how much resources have been made available for the first tranche, and $110 million that have been programmed so far on or set aside for the first and second selection rounds. So the third selection round will be looking at not all, but the majority of the remaining resources. Oops, the question disappeared. It went into the answered mode. Let me try to find this. So in terms of walking you through the process, I'm not sure when this particular question was put in here. I think Jurgis actually walks you through the process. You will submit it and it will come to us through what we call the portal, submitted by the agency with an endorsement. And we will look at each and every PPG request against the selection criteria that Jurgis presented. And then we will look into so this will include an alignment with the strategy, the regional balance, the IPLC, so on and so forth. And then we will actually notify whether the PPG request has been accepted or not within a set period of time. And for the for the third selection round, you will actually hear back from us after the selection round closes in September 30th, and you will hear back from us by December 8th. And just to clarify, each and every submission that came to us, you will hear from us whether it was accepted or it was not. So there should not be a situation. I think one question was touching upon this issue. There should not be a situation where you submitted something and you have not heard back from the GEF Secretariat. Anything that has come to the GEF submitted through the portal, we look at them in batch individually, but in that particular period for the selection round, and you will hear back from us. So if there were any questions, it is likely that your proposal was not submitted to us, or something happened, or the response was just not captured. But there really should not be a situation where you did not, you submitted something, you did not hear back from us. Okay, let's just go through. Are there any open questions? Do you want to take the question on georeferencing and geospatial databases, Jurgis?
Thanks. There's a very specific question. As you will see, looking at the action areas, we don't go to that level of detail. So maybe as part of a larger project where this would be required for some reason and it would have to be demonstrated, maybe it could be part of what the GBFF project could cover, but it would be to achieve a higher level goal that is consistent with the implementation of the global biodiversity framework and the action areas. So please make sure if this is part of is a sub-activity within a larger project to articulate why such activities would be required in a larger project that is aligned with the action areas. I hope that answers the question.
Okay,
Maybe I
so
can take the question on what happens if countries do not use their allocation or didn't get the project selected, etc. So the allocation system works in a way that you do not lose the resources if you don't submit or don't get accepted. The allocation system sets a maximum percentage for each country. So let's say if your ceiling is at 1% of the resources that have been open for programming, currently you can submit up to 2.11 million of a project. If you don't submit or don't get selected in this programming tranche, and we open a next programming tranche when we get an additional 250 million in accumulated pledges, it means we will have open for programming since the beginning a total of 460 million, 1 million. And so that country with a 1% country specific ceiling suddenly will be able to submit a project that is up to 4.61 million. So what happens for those countries that are not able to access resources because they cannot submit or are not selected because there's not enough resources and the competition is too intense in the selection rounds for now, is that automatically the maximum amount for a project submission they will be able to make in the future will increase in the next programming tranche. So that also responds to another question of countries that are worried that their current maximum is too small. It's indeed a strategy for those countries to wait the next tranche to have a bigger project submission in a future selection round in the next programming tranche.
okay, thanks so much, Jorgis. Do you at this point Yevhen answer open the floor for those who have their hands raised and patiently waiting, and perhaps some of them are still on the questions that remains to be answered. There are, I think, 17 open questions. We already answered 47, but it might be good to get some interactions with those who have their hands raised. Over to you, Yevhen.
Okay, thank you. Maybe the first one could go to Sarah Diaz de Frank. Can you talk? Is Sarah Diaz de Frank still there? Okay, then we go to Gabriel Jaramillo. Do we have a problem with the collection? Francis, are you there? Francis?
Hello.
Hi, Francis.
Hi, Francis. You can hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, my question, thank you very much for this brief. My question is a very short one. If I have heard correct, did I hear that this round we are encouraged to use the international financing institution to submit the PPG? If that is true, then what, to submit the concept, if that is true, what happens to those who might still use UN agencies?
Okay, thank you for the question. Okay, I think you can hear me now without the echo. Okay, so thank you for that question, Francis. Let me try to explain this one more time. As part of the GBFF programming directions as well as resource allocation, there is a hard target that countries agreed upon of having 25% of the portfolio of the GBFF resources to be programmed through international financing institutions that are GF agencies, 25%. And we're keeping track of this because this is something that is required and agreed upon. And as of now, after the 2 selection rounds, 6% of the resources have been programmed through the IFIs. The rest has either gone through the UN agencies or the other GF agencies, either national or international NGOs. What that means is that there is catching up that we will need to start to do on the programming through the IFIs, because the countries that have submitted and they got their PPGs approved so far, they have gone ahead and used other agencies. And for this particular round, we need to be cognizant that A, the CIS and LDCs are lagging behind, and B, there are needs for us to, as a portfolio level, to start catching up to the IFIs. Now, target is 25%. So it does not mean that the submissions that have been sent to us from the non-international financial institutions will not be reviewed. That's not what we're saying. But we just want to be transparent that the agreed upon targets on the programming, we're already sort of lagging behind, in particular for the IFIs, and there is a need for information shared among the countries of this particular fact that, and also at the portfolio level, this is a hard, it's not an aspirational target, this is a requirement for the GBFF to be met. So this is why we're telling you in a transparent manner that because we are lagging behind in the portfolio level progress on the IFIs as well as LDCs and CIS for the 3rd selection round proposals that are coming through for them, we will need to be looking at them in a preferential and prioritized manner. I hope that's clear. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to be looking at proposals from non-LDCs and non-CIS. And it also does not mean we will not be looking at or approving proposals from the non-IFIs.
Okay, thank you.
Eben, would you like to call on others who have their hands up still?
Sorry, I did not unmute myself. So this is Sarah Diaz de Frank.
Good morning. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Okay. I don't have any question now.
Okay.
Okay.
And is Gabriela Jaramillo? Are you there?
Yes, but my question has already been answered. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So, Cheese, that's all we have for hands up. Now you still have a lot of questions in.
Okay, so
Right.
we have, I see one more hand. You've been from Juan Nogues, maybe?
That's weird. I don't see on my screen. Or can you call them? I don't see from my.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello, thank you for the presentation. Very informative. My question, I put it on the text box, but I don't know if it was read. I downloaded the PPG request form, and I can fill up the tables, but where the text goes, the description it's password protected. I don't know if everybody or someone else is having the same problem, but the Word file is doesn't let me add text. And I'm not sure this is just my problem or somebody else's problem. Thank you.
Cheese, do you hear?
Sorry, I was actually trying to access the file to see if I can replicate the issue you're having, and I can't seem to replicate it. So I think we're gonna have to look into this and respond. But typically, ultimately, these things are gonna be submitted online.
Yeah.
So that is that's not the most satisfying answer I can give you. But I think you're probably talking about the different fields, right? And you can actually put the data or click on boxes, but you're having difficulties to put the actual text. Is that it?
That's right. In the project description and rationale,
Yeah.
I can download and click on the tables that have fill in options, but where the project description goes 5 pages,
Mm-hmm.
I'm having trouble, but maybe it's just me, and I've tried it in different computers, but yeah,
Okay.
maybe it's a
We'll look
bilateral
into
issue.
this. Yeah, and we can respond to you. But okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Let's see if there are any other questions.
The next one is Yitishan Gao.
Someone has a hand up? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. You are probably talking to Mr. Ihtisham Gul. Fact is that this is Dr. Rizwan Irshad from Ministry of Climate Change, Islamabad, Pakistan. I put a question on the chat box and it is partially responded that you people sent a communication to GEF operational focal point on 8th August. Is it possible that we can get a link to that, some information material or the invitation at the website, so that we can access that also? I am belonging to the focal points office for CBD, and we did not hear anything like that. So if we get an official communication, it will be easy for us to circulate it with our partners and prepare some proposals. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that comment. I think the intent was actually to also copy the CBD focal points. So I'm not really sure if it's the issue of the individual addresses or what it might be. But you know, just the intent whenever we do these things is to make sure that the CBD focal points are also informed. So
Then we have Arufla Avan. Are you there?
Hello.
Yes, we can hear
we
you.
can hear you.
Yeah. Good morning. It was very informative session. But my question is regarding that West Road Project Reparation Grant. And that is particularly regarding Section B. past project activities. Like if the proposal which we are placing, tabling for you, if it doesn't have any past project activities, would you still consider it like this section will be empty? Like I'm not fully brief on this one. You can please guide me properly. Hello?
Okay, yeah, okay, so thank you. Yugis, you want to take this question?
Sure. I'm not
Yes.
sure exactly where you are on which template on past project activities. We don't require any past project activities in any case. If there are ongoing project or what we call a baseline of activities and investments by the government, by other development agency, etc., we want that to be referenced so that the project explain what it will add in terms of value compared to what is already done. But in essence, we don't require any past project activity per se. So we can maybe take this bilaterally to understand where you are seeing this, and I can respond more specifically. But I hope I've answered in the general sense that there is no requirement to have past project activities for your submission.
Okay, that's fine. Actually, I've downloaded this template from your website, and the one that says request for project preparation grant. So it's up there, that's why it is a bit confusion, but thanks for your answer. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, next one is Jim Limpania.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jen, calling in from Nairobi, UNEP. I work with UNEP. I have two questions, and I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me, please?
Yes.
Okay, good. So my first question is to do with the formula for allocation. You said that the ceiling should not exceed twice the GEF cycle allocation amount. So the question is, does this mean that the allocation amount will change in the next GEF funding cycle in GEF 9? That's one. So the second question is looking at the redoing of the table. Apparently, we got the third call, the invitation for the third call, and the table of funds allocated per country was the same as the one we had received for the second call. So my question is, when will we get a revised table, or how long does it take for the increment? Or is there a new table that we didn't get for the third call, which is different from the one of the second call? And then I have a specific question for a country. If there is a country that was allocated, for example, 10 million, and it submitted a proposal of, let's say, 5 million in the second call, and now it wants to submit another one of 5 million in the third call. But looking at the presentation from Cheese about the geographical balance, regional balance, and then there is another criteria I have forgotten. It looks like if this country resubmits a proposal when it has already got during the second call, the chances of its proposal going through is very minimal. Over to you. Thank you. Should that country
Thank you so
resubmit or
much.
not?
Let me try to answer the question, not in the order posed. So there is a document that we shared in the presentation with the web link, and also shared in the Q&A chat. I think I put the link to the updated table of the maximum amount. So please take a look at that. What you will notice is that the overall amounts a country can access in the first tranche stays the same, right? But if a country already accessed and successfully submitted a PPG request that was accepted, that amount has been subtracted so that the amount that you can access for the third round is reduced by that amount that you have already managed to access for the first or second round. And I can if useful, I can actually put the table link in the chat. To answer your last question, go ahead and submit, please, if a country has any remaining priority that the country would like to access the with the remaining amount under the maximum ceiling. There is nothing that would prohibit you, or nothing that would sort of compel you not to submit a proposal as of now. So please do so. And the message isn't that is not that you have something that was already approved, so therefore you're not going to be considered. I mean, that's not, we don't have that kind of a blanket approach. And what was your first question? I think I answered your third and the second question.
The first question was to do with the formula of allocation for each country, where it has to be maximum twice. It's the GEF cycle allocation. So, like, what will happen in GEF 9? Will you now change to GEF 9 allocation? For example, if you got it?
Yes. My understanding is actually those are going to be determined based on the GEF 8. And because we're not actually doing the maximum ceiling based on any specific time period. This is by the tranche, right?
So Francis?
Thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I think I want to go a little bit back to the question that Jen of UNEP raised, and I want to focus more on Uganda regarding how much Uganda can actually apply for in this round. It was 1.6 in the second round, and that seems yet to be the same information. So, is Uganda's allocation, even as of the third call, the same as 1.6 million?
Maybe I can take this one and try to clarify. So we republished a table to simplify the life of everyone. The information is exactly the same for the ceiling and the maximum amount in the first tranche, because we're still in the first tranche. It is just that we provided 2 extra columns, 2 extra pieces of information, so that everybody knows the amounts that have been already programmed, approved in the first 2 selection rounds within the first tranche. And based on what has been already approved, countries that already got something approved know exactly how much they can still submit in the third selection round. For countries that either didn't submit or didn't get a PPG request approved, nothing has changed. It's just for the 24 countries that got a PPG request approved, they already have used some or all of their resources. And so this new table provides that information for those 24 countries on how much they have left and whether they can and to what extent they can submit a new proposal in the third selection round. For all the other countries, there is no additional information. The ceilings, the percentage are set up until 2030 or when the up until the end of the fund, or when the GBFF Council decides to change them, but they have been set and are not made to be changed. The maximum dollar amount in the first selection round and second selection round and third selection round, they all depend on what you have already submitted. So that's why we published a new table to simplify the life of the 24 countries that already got access to some resources. I hope it clarifies that for the other countries, there is no additional information in this table.
So it's Jeans, do you have any further question, or it's just your hand's still there? Or cheats and jokes, you want to go over there's still a lot of questions in the chat.
So this means there is a difference between a tranche and a call. So it means this first tranche is running for some time, and under it you have had so far 3 calls. Because I think what we are mixing up is the difference between a call and a tranche. So we had thought that each time you're going to send out an invitation for submission of proposals, you will also have a new tranche. By the way I'm understanding it is that a tranche is different from a call or call of rounds of proposals. Over.
Yeah, in relation to Jane's question, there's one also from Indonesia about when and where be if there's a 4th round of race tranche. Chase and Yorks, you want to take up this?
I'm sorry.
Sure.
Yeah,
I can re-explain maybe. So what was decided is to make resource available into discrete programming tranches, because we are receiving contribution on a rolling basis, and still we have to inform countries on how much they can submit and at a given point in time. So we have open after the decision of the GEF Council in February, the first programming tranche that is making available 211 million for programming. This first programming tranche will remain open and will carry out multiple selection rounds as we are doing up until the full 211 million has been programmed. So far, we carried out 2 selection rounds and we have programmed 110 million, as Chizuru has explained. What you have to understand is that the opening of the tranche was based on the confirmed pledges, but the approval in the selection rounds is based on the actual cash amount we have in the trust fund. We cannot approve a PPG request for which we do not have the funds available deposited in the trust fund. And there is always a time lag between the pledge and the actual deposit of the cash in the trust fund. That's why we're carrying out multiple selection rounds, and we'll do so in the first programming tranche up until the 211 million have been programmed. So we are still in the first programming tranche, and we'll see if with the third selection round we program in full the 211 million or not. If not, we will carry out another selection round later on to program the full 211 million. So that's for the first programming tranche. And so what was published in February was the ceiling, the percentage that will not change, and a maximum dollar amount for the full first programming tranche. And we're still under the first programming tranche. That's why there is no additional information. The table we just published was really to clarify for the countries that have already used resources, that have got PPG request approved, how much they have left under their ceiling within the first programming tranche. And so later on, when we will be in a position to open a second programming tranche, which is when we will have gotten 250 million in additional pledges, then we will publish a new table, and there the maximum dollar amount of funding requests countries can make will increase compared to what we published in February. I hope that was clear now with the full picture of the tranches and the multiple selection rounds within tranches. Thank you.
So we are almost over target time. There are some questions at a very technical level, like how to complete the PPG form, and I think that would be, it could be taken up bilaterally later on. Also, Jason, you also, if I'm correct, understand correct, you will have another session, in-person session during COP16. And if that happens, I think colleagues, focal points, stakeholders can have even more direct question and answer session. With that, can we conclude this one? And we will keep the question for next round. Okay, thank you very much for your participation, everybody from around the world. We have over 441 registration, and we have more than, at the peak point, over 250 show up, and it's a very good show of interest, and we can work together to make the GBFF a beautiful undertaking, months and years to come. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Cheese and the Jokes for your time and availability, like always. Thank you very much. The webinar is closed now. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice day.